Hey, Howard here again at 82 Maple. Look what we're unboxing today. We've got a couple of these water transfer pumps. Basically, let's just call them what they are. Fire pumps. And here in the Joe Rich Valley in Kelowna, man, during the summer, it can get hot. It can get dry. And whether for irrigation or for just sheer fire protection, gotta have these. So you know the whole story. Coral and I came here from Langley. We come in from what is essentially rainforest country into, I don't know, I'm just gonna call it a savanna, whether it is or not. But wow, did we get a wake-up call. And so with this property, we inherited a couple of pumps, and I'm going to throw in a couple of photos here, but they clearly hadn't been used for a couple of years. They were completely inoperable. One of them was totally seized and wouldn't even move. The other one had no oil in it. We added oil, we added fuel, we changed the spark plug. We did everything we could, and we couldn't get it to fire. So sadly, they went on to whatever world they went on to, and we needed something. So we went online. I don't even remember where we got these from, but when it says Honda powered, hey, I'm in, because they generally start with significant ease. We're going to test that in a couple of minutes. But before we get to that part, hey, here at 82 Maple, it's all about the stories. And so literally, we have so much stuff around, and we're trying desperately to organize it, and came to do this video, and we have our son helping us, etc., etc. And this little plane was sitting on top of the box for today's unboxing. So this goes way back to when I was 12 or 14 years old. I don't know if you ever flew those remote control, well, not remote. They were string operated planes. And so you'd have one of these, and there were some strings that ran here. And now watch the tail rudder. It would go up or down based on this. So you could raise or lower it. And because the rudder was glued permanently in place, so the strings attached here, and as it went around, it would keep steering the plane outwards, which allowed it to go around and around in a circle until, if you had fueled it properly, you were so dizzy you fell down. And so you get used to that. But literally, this is now 50 years old, and I'm not going to try and start it, believe you me. But there was a little spring starter here, and you'd wind and you'd wind and you'd wind. And I remember, and then boom! And on a cold winter's day, I'd get my finger in here, and I would come home with 3 fingers cut up. And but it was just too much fun. And these wing fabrics are just so, like, this is 50 years old. Some of them are not intact, but it is like so fragile. And hey, that's today's story from yesteryear. We're gonna set that aside now. And we're going to take a little cutting knife, and we're going to do the unboxing. Let's see what we find in here. Okay, so it's well secured for packing. I'm good with that. Let's see, it says Honda, so we're all good. And there we have it. So, spoiler alert, this is the unboxing of the second unit. The first unit I already have hooked up down in the creek, and it's been irrigating, and it's been helping us just keep things generally moist. But a couple of things I'll go over with you very, very quickly. I just love the fittings that come with this. Threaded. This goes into the fire hose. I've got some of that. We'll see it in a couple of minutes. Rubber gasket in there. Some really great clamps for here. Hey, you can't go wrong. They didn't just send me a bare engine base and nothing. Everything as you would expect. The stuff that needs to be sealed is sealed. Bonus, gravel screen. None of that big chunky stuff gonna work its way in here and spoil our little pump. So engine, get this out of the way. Pump, 2-inch fittings. That is awesome. So just to explain why I'm so happy about those fittings, let me tell you, by contrast, the fittings that I don't like. And that would be this. When these seals dry out, in my experience, so all of this is just my opinion, they not only start to leak, but for some reason they work loose. So this works on the principle of about a quarter turn to tightness. And I've used these, and these were on the property. I tried them with this pump. I didn't want to spend extra money and get hosed with all this kind of fittings. I'm brand new to this. I've never owned a fire pump in my entire life, believe you me. And so I'm working my way through this, and we'll go through the sand screen and all of that stuff in a couple minutes. But I would hook these up repeatedly. There was lots of these that came with the farm. There was some old hose. It was very old. It kept blowing through and was more of a nuisance than it was worth. So I ordered 200 feet of new fire hose. But these fittings, I could not successfully convert them and rely on them. The pump develops a fair amount of pressure. The fittings and the seals are old. It would run for 30 minutes, and all of a sudden I had water not going to the sprinkler but just running on the ground. That's why, let's come back to this, I was ecstatic to see this threaded coupler and on the ends, and I'll show you in a few minutes the coupler that I use for joining from hose to hose to hose to hose. And it certainly, in my opinion, beats this one. Okay, we're heading for the creek. Here we are at Creekside. Hey, no magic. You can tell it's fall. And the fire season has passed. It's windy. And yeah, so if you're wondering, one more reason to have a pump. We have a transformer on a power pole that you can't see through the trees there. And literally, I thought the transformer exploded this afternoon. Had this been a couple of months ago, we could have easily, at this moment, been in the middle of a raging fire on this property. The fuse blew, saved the transformer, but there was a bang that was like 3 shotguns going off simultaneously. And so we're on our own out here. We do our fire protection, we do our electricity, we put in a generator, so 10 seconds later we had clean power. But had a fire erupted as a result of that, we're on our own for fire protection. The fire hall is 2 kilometers away, but 2 months ago, by the time they got here, it would have been far too late. So, lots of logic for having this little pump, and a couple of things. So, because I'm a brand new fire pump owner, we've taken a lot of pains to label things. This is pump 1, intake. Pump 1, outgo. Pump 1, intake. This needs to be a solid hose. Notice I can't squeeze this. If this was like this hose, which I can squeeze, the suction from the pump, it makes common sense for those of you that have had pumps, but for a novice like me, I have to be stepped through it step by step. This pump, this hose cannot be collapsible. Down at the end is the gravel screen that came with it. You'll see I had to get a couple of extra fittings. There's also a connector underwater. We'll talk about that in a bit. But this pump, in the dry season, we had to quit using the creek. There just wasn't enough water. And so this pump, we literally, not intentionally, but let it run till it ran out of fuel. Not a big fan of that, because when it's out of fuel, it amps up the oxygen. That's not good for a pump or an engine. But it's not run for 2 months, so I just spent a minute bragging about Honda power in the unboxing of pump number 2. Let's see if this starts. The reason I have this little fuel tin here is I've just thrown some fuel into it. Let's see if my brag was authentic or realistic. So we'll pull the choke because it did run out of fuel. I'll throttle it back a little bit. Wow, that is crazy. This has not run for something like 55 to 60 days. One pull. Hey, need I say more about Honda power? Okay, so I don't want to rev it up right now because I think it just needs to warm up. We're a few degrees above freezing, and you can see coral right now. No, I'm actually going to show you coral right now. The very frozen coral who's doing triple duty and coming out here to video me. This is not fun. I'm wearing this shirt for a reason, and I'll explain that in a couple of minutes. But before this thing gets pumping, here's my favorite. I'm just going to throttle this right. Oh, throttled it right down so much I shut it off, which is the shutoff on this item. So this is the connector that I like. Notice again, okay, so we're draining a bunch of dirty creek water out of here and we'll fill it up. But this here is the connector that I like, as opposed to the ones that I was showing you that I had discontinued. And so when this clamps on, I have a solid connection. I'm going to get wet right now, but boom, that's it. I can pretty much do anything I want with this from here on in, and this connection is secure. Number 2, one of the advertised features of this particular pump is that it holds its prime. That means I don't have to fiddle around pouring water in here to get this pump primed back up if I let it sit for 55 or 60 days. That's test number 2. So the pump fired, passed test number 1. Now, let's see where we go from here. Okay, we're gonna put it under full power. Coral's gonna follow up this line here. Whoa, we've already got water going up. I just seen a bubble shoot by, and we're gonna fire up that sprinkler over there. So there we have it. That's been sitting 55 days, and it held its prime completely. That is just crazy workmanship. Love it. And there we go. That sprinkler is good for about an 80-foot circle, and we're going to go up and take a look at it after I shut the pump off, and we'll just see. Take a look. That is an awesome do-it-yourself sprinkler stand construct. So we're going to cool this little pump down, shut it off, and man, I'm so glad we got this video in today. I apologize for wind noise, but we want to just bundle this thing up and get it into the barn and put it away for the winter. So sorry again for the wind noise, but that's where we are. Okay, quick trip up here. Coral's staying extra close to me so that the wind noise doesn't totally cut out all audio. But this is a very clever pump stand design, and I've got to build 1 or 2 more of these. So we've got about 150 feet of hose on this. We've got about, as close as I can figure, a 15-foot elevation. That pump that we just demoed is good for an 80-foot elevation, and it'll still put out enough pressure to run this sprinkler head. But look at this thing. So water comes in here. You'll see the same connector. Got a little leak still in here. This is running down. I've got some stuff to seal up. This was year number 1. Water comes in here and floods the entire base and can pressure up these sides to run the sprinkler head. We have a really good sized sprinkler head. Sorry for technically specific people. I have no idea. I just went to my local irrigation supply store and got one of these. But the bottom line is, this is rock solid secure. There is at least 100 pounds of water in here. So this is not going anywhere. Wind, anything. It's rock solid on the ground. Very clever little design. I'm going to go and replicate it. We inherited it with the farm, and are just thrilled about it. So here we go. We'll go back up to the shop where there's less wind noise to just wrap this up. Hey, I've got to insert a kind of funny story here. Funny and not so funny. So, son Kyler is a novice around many things, just like I am. So he was being helpful and decided to get the pump ready for operation. So it comes, no oil in it, of course, and needs to add oil. So it says fill with oil. He doesn't go a lot deeper in the instructions, but here's what happens. So this is the way the pump typically sits. What you're looking at here is the oil filler. So he proceeds to fill this with oil till it's full. Puts this back in, fires it. It runs for a couple of minutes and ceases operation. Now, some of you that are mechanically astute know that that could not possibly, meaning his actions in terms of filling the oil, resulted in a good outcome. So he's pretty distressed, thinking he's just blown up my brand new pump, which was, or the brand new engine, which was 700 and change Canadian, complete with the pump mechanism. So what really happened? Well, the engine sucked up the oil, and so I went into the air filter here. I'm not going to bother undoing it, but it was saturated with oil. I took it, washed it out in gasoline, and put it back in, fired, and it's run perfectly ever since. You know what? That's my definition of bulletproof. So again, we're walking back up to the shop, but I just got to stop and show you something. So here we go. Gates everywhere. And these little gray bins here, I just can't say enough about them. So again, super easy to load. He says hopefully. There we go. You can drop that if there's heavy items to put into it. You see I have a spare intake hose here with these fittings I've been talking about. Super, super, super secure. Got a 50-foot hose in here that I haven't even unpackaged yet. So everything we just looked at out there is going into this bin. I'll throw this side up and that's it. That's going to be pump number 1. I have an identical unit. The recently unboxed pump is going to go into it, and there we have it. Pump 1 and pump 2. It's going into the loft of our barn, and there it will sit till next spring, and we pull it down and we're ready to go. I love it. Everything, a place for everything and everything in its place. Hey, that was one of my dad's mantras.
Loti, what do you think? Sit. Sit. Roll over. Roll over. Good girl. Play dead. Bang. Bang. Good girl. Okay.
Hey,
on to important things.
Here we are. So how do you like Loti's silly pet tricks? Yeah, we've had her around. How old is she now, Carl?
11. Coming up on 11.
Yeah. Pug. Totally. Okay, so we unboxed this. You've seen where we went with it. And we've got some really neat stuff coming up. Hey, just follow along with me. So this is a big shout out to the Bradleys at Catbird Hill. Man, the light is weird in this valley at this time of day, isn't it? So under here we have the big tool rack. It arrived. It came off the truck. We offloaded it with the John Deere that's just sitting over there behind Coral. And yeah, sorry for the mess, but we're under construction. This is what construction looks like. But this isn't even the beginning. Hey, that's a rabbit hole. And this big tool rack is going to be in an upcoming episode, 1, 2, or 3, or 4 episodes from now. It's all about the tools. And I had just spoken about it, that one of my dad's favorite sayings was, a place for everything and everything in its place. And, you know, with the right tools, look at this stuff. Where do you get round pieces of concrete like this? Well, we had to do some coring here. Son Kyler ran into town. He had experience from working at a major concrete company and knew exactly what to ask for. Asked for a machine that would core a 2.5 or 3 inch hole. And you know what? The right tool not only cored the concrete, but Coral's going to zero in on this right here. That is a piece of 1/2 inch metal rebar. And that coring machine didn't even slow down. It just chewed right through, gave us a perfect hole where we needed it in our crawl space wall. And so the big tool rack is all about organizing our tools. Now, you may not have a multi-acreage property, but if you don't, and you just have a smaller property, and you are periodically frustrated because your tools are not always where you need them to be, maybe you're just frustrated by the inefficiency. Hey, spoiler alert, we've got an episode upcoming on the Bucket Boss. All of the tools you need right in the palm of your hand. So that's an upcoming episode. Hey, we've got more. Come on in. Oh yeah, I just put this up today. That was 9 years ago next month. Number 55. I had just turned 56, and so my go-kart had 55 on it, which was
your favorite number.
I don't know. My favorite number. That's it. Thank you for the prompt, Coral Dawn. And that little go-kart is the one that won a local championship that qualified me for entry in Italy. And we've got just tons of stuff coming at us. nothing other than Elon Musk's Starlink. We are just dying out here for for internet. All of these videos have been created and uploaded on cellular service. I can't even believe that that's possible. So hopefully we come into the 21st century or something like that with Starlink. So we're going to do an unboxing on that. And this box here, you know what? Snap-on is more than about the tools. It's an amazing brand, and they've done an awesome job of building a brand. And for all of us that are on YouTube and all of us that are just sharing out, having that brand is so important. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. I was a former Snap-on tools dealer. I have a younger brother that is a thriving Snap-on tools dealer here in this province. And he keeps feeding my addiction by bringing me all sorts of Snap-on memorabilia. So we're going to lay it out on the little workshop table here and just show you what I get from my brother. That's point one. But number two, what's important in terms of building a brand. After my brother delivered the latest box and then some of Snap-on memorabilia, it got me to thinking, hey, maybe I need some 82 Maple memorabilia. Would you want to receive an 82 Maple t-shirt or hat? You got to let me know. So we started out this video with this little plane. And you know what? 82 Maple, if you haven't already guessed it, is all about the stories. So I grew up in Williams Lake, BC, a town of 5,000 people, 150 miles south of British Columbia's geographic dead center. There was a nice little airport there, some hobbyist aircraft aficionados, and some commercial that had private planes. And so, true story, one day a guy was working on his own aircraft, a fabric covered 50-year-old something. So I left Williams Lake in the early 80s, and so 50 years old took us back into the 1930s. He was working on just maintaining, getting ready, his aircraft ready for flight. Somebody in town of some substance and means heard that he was working on his aircraft and wanted to go up and see it. They rolled up in their luxury car. I have no idea whether it was a Mercedes or a Cadillac or a Lincoln, but they rolled up. And the fellow that got out had some vintage behind him. He was walking with a cane. He walked over, he walked around the fabric covered aircraft with the owner working on it for a little bit, and not a word was exchanged, goes the story. He had his cane, however, and he was quite intrigued by the fabric covering on the wings. And he kind of took his cane and just pressed against it. Something happened and a little rip occurred. At which point the owner and mechanic picked up a 12 or 15-inch crescent wrench, again as the story goes, and without an emotional reaction or exchange, walked over to the luxury vehicle that the visitor had driven up in and took the wrench and went tick, 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 tick 4 times, each time taking out one of the 4 headlights. The visitor got into his car and drove away without a word exchanged, and the owner of the airplane went back to working on his aircraft. Hey, that's the community I grew up in, and it was rich with stories. I'm so fortunate. I'm so blessed. I hope you enjoyed the story.